Good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Padden. I'm with the St. John Storytelling Group. It is my great pleasure and honor as a Labradorian to present to you In My Time, Stories from Labrador Elders. These are an interesting and diverse group of tellers who made a successful transition from the hunting, trapping, fishing, gathering type of economy to the modern wage economy. And I don't think that was a very easy thing to do a lot of the times. So I hope you enjoy, and thank you. St. John Storytelling presents In My Time, Stories from Labrador Elders.
Hello, my name is Alex Saunders. I'm a mixed race actually. I got some Irish blood and some English blood, and I got some Inuit blood, and I got some Innu blood too. There's Innu on my father's side. His mother was a Montagne Innu from down lower North Shore, Quebec. But my mother was an Inuit woman from Ukak. But her four bears, I guess her fathers, were Inuit from way north, from Nubwak and Rama area. And she told me a story about a woman that in the old days, and I don't know how old, but she told me how the old Inuit customs that they had in those days. And this is a story really about resilience, I'll tell you, and native ingenuity and intelligence too. So anyway, the custom in the old days, way back, I would highly suspect way back, maybe 1500s, 1600s, custom in those days was when they traveled around, they chased the caribou and the seal and chased everything, fish and whatever. They just lived off the land, completely off the land. There was no such thing as a store to buy anything. So this old woman was crippled. She couldn't walk well without a crutch. No such thing as crutches either in those days, but the people made a crutch for her out of a stick from the woods that had a branch on top, and they put padding over it, hide, and she used that as a way to get around. So anyway, it was in the fall, and they were in Rama Fjord, and the time had come to go in the country to look for caribou, because it was caribou migration time. Caribou spend the summer months, not all of them, a lot of them, out on the coast, trying to get away from the bloody flies. And at least it was breeze off the water. And they'd come down to the salt water to eat kelp and drink salt water too. So anyway, the people were going in the country to caribou hunting. So this old woman couldn't keep up. So they lived in sod houses, some of them. And some of them had tent houses, hide tents, lived in hide tents. But anyway, they left this old lady in a sod hut, and the ground was frozen by then. It was probably in October, November. And they gave her as much food as they could and left her there, fend for herself. And of course, the ultimate reason they left her there was to die, because she just lived her life and she accepted that. So she was in the sod house, living on the food that the people left her. And this one day, she could hear something out around the sod house, and it was heavy. And she knew, instinctively, she knew it was a polar bear. She said, "Aha! So you come to get me," she said. Well, she accepted that too. So she was there. They had a little pallet made for her, not a bed, but something similar. And she was lying on that, and this damn polar bear tried to get in through a little tunnel. They had a tunnel made as an entrance to the sod house, and they usually had rocks placed inside the tunnel so that any big animal, like a polar bear, could not get in. But where she's an old woman, she couldn't handle the big rocks, but make a barrier. There was none there. So the bear crawled in through, and he stuck his head inside the sod house in the opening. They crawled in through the entranceway, the tunnel, and he started roaring, of course, like he would. And she said, "You stop, Tennessee." She means you devil. She said, "You come to get me," and he had his mouth wide open, and she was smart enough to take that crutch with the pads on top and ram it into his throat with his mouth wide open. And of course, he started beating his head around, trying to get rid of the crutch in his mouth, and all he did was hit the side of the wall and drive the crutch down further until he suffocated, and he died. So about a month later, the men came back from caribou hunting, and so they were going to go to the hut and take the woman and bury her. In those days, normally the Indian would bury their people above ground. They would bury them with rocks piled up all over the corpse. And if it was a person of stature, they'd have another little grave, stone grave next to the grave where the body was, with their personal belongings, especially their tools, hunting tools, or their ulus, or whatever kind of tools people needed for survival. They would bury them next to the corpse. So the boys figured they'd go back there now and bury this woman. She had to be dead by now, starved to death. So one of the young fellows went on ahead anyway and ran up to the sod hut, and he come back. And he was frightened to death. He said something bad at that sod house. He said there's a big mess. There's guts, entrails everywhere, all outside, spread around, tore up, guts and hide, and there's a polar bear, but must have been an eagle, must have been a devil that killed a polar bear, because there's no one there but the old woman. So they approached that old sod hut with trepidation, I can tell you that. And a couple of the men were hardy men. They were all hardy and capable people, confident. So they said, "We got to go inside see what happened to the old woman." So they crawled in, and there she was, hale and hardy, best kind. A lot better than when they left her, because she had, when she killed the polar bear, lost her head was an ulu, a woman's knife. And there was up over the entrance, they had a window made out of a stomach of a seal, just some light in. And what she did was she started cutting away at the polar bear with the ulu, and hanging up the meat around the sod hut, inside the sod hut, and drying it, and eating it raw, of course. And then she got out to the window, because she couldn't get out to the entranceway, the polar bear was lying there dead. And she started to cut them up from the outside then, and cut them all up, and clean them up, and had a whole stack of food, and dried meat, and dried fat, tunduk, it's called. And so she lived well. And oh man, they were so enthralled with her, actually, and as a result of that, she had elevated status in the group. And she lived for a couple of years after that, finally ended up dying. But I tell you one thing, by geez, she didn't go without a fight.
I'll tell you a little about my mother survived the Spanish flu in 1918 in the Scoffy River. Our fathers were trappers, and there was two families, my father and mother with their family, and next door, Aunt Nellie Michelin and Uncle Jock from Sagasquasho, because that Aunt Nellie and my mother were sisters. So the Spanish flu struck them in the Scoffy, and the trappers were away, and just the mothers with the children at home in the house. When my mother came down with the Spanish flu, her legs turned black from the knees down, must have been circulation. She had about 3 small children. If I don't look at the ages, it might be 3, it might be 4. And when she was down on her knees walking around the house trying to keep the fire going, look after the children, she was getting more sick each day. Innu men came to her place. She was trading for the Hudson Bay Company. They had a little store with main food like flour, molasses, butter, basic stuff a trapper would need in the bush. He came to find her sick on the floor. He went back to the Innu camp. He brought a woman named Mrs. Sinish. And Mrs. Sinish later was a chief's wife when she was old. And I do remember her in her old age. Mrs. Sinish came to my mother's house and nursed her. And the way she did, and put her to bed and she dug down in the snow and she got the leaves and earth medicines. And a little later I can tell you which medicines she used. But she nursed her with the earth medicines, leaves, and made poultices from the needles off a fir tree and wrapped it around her legs and wrapped it in towels and put her to bed. And because somebody was looking after her and she was getting treatment, she relaxed and went to sleep and had a sleep. And she was nursed by that Innu woman, and that Innu woman stayed at her house as long as it took, maybe a week or longer. And she nursed her back to health and looked after the children and kept the food going. In the next house, my Aunt Nellie and Uncle Jock had 3 children, and their 3 children died in less than 24-hour time. At the time my mother gave out. And we believe all our lives that my mother only survived because that Innu woman arrived and treated her with earth medicines and the Innu way of handling illnesses.
Those days hunting and whatnot. Did you hunted seals too, did you?
Yeah,
Yeah. Was it out on Lake Melville?
yes,
Okay.
not Lake Melville, seal
Yeah.
every spring.
Yeah. And did you always got lots, I suppose you needed them for dogs and whatnot as well as
Yeah.
yourselves.
Uh,
Yeah.
In later years, they would buy the pelts, eh?
Yeah.
Sorry. And,
Very good.
well, yeah, and you did a lot of caribou hunting on the Mealies too.
Yeah, over there. One time in January, it's not very good over on the mountains, I can tell you that. He's over there one time, myself, my brother Bob, and Steve Charlton Warren. We were in Shoal River. And we always had telehurricanes one time, and we never ever experienced one here, not like outside. But we went in hunting, and we killed our caribou. We hauled them down the lead of the river, come back out to our camp that night. So the next day we went in. We just got there, and it was getting awful dark. And it hit on, and never ever seen nothing like that. It was a good job we down in the river, or we'd never survive. But coming out, before we got out, go down over the mountains, it was quite a big lake. So we didn't know what we were going to do, how we were going to get across. We couldn't see nothing. You couldn't fall around inside the lake because there's no trees on the land. You couldn't tell the lake from the land. So the only thing we do, I told them, was trust to the leader.
Yeah.
So we put the leader
That's your dog.
ahead and told her to take us back. We went. Started like an awful long time. The dog stopped. We walked up and there's fear on the path where you come out through. That's the only thing saved us that time.
That's amazing.
And then we come out over the mountains down in the river. There's big trees like here, just broke off across the river, everywhere.
Yeah.
So we got out to our camp, and there's trees falling down everywhere. So we had a rough night. Dogs bawled all night and scared of the trees falling. So in the morning it was stopped snowing, still blowing some. And there wasn't when we come out that river, when we went in that river, we had to walk ahead of the dogs, snow to make a track. And when we come out that morning, there was not one speck of snow left on the ice. It blowed that hard.
What time of the year?
It was in January.
You see?
So that's what it can be like hunting caribou in January.
Oof. That's great.
So I don't know how hard it must have been to take all that snow. There was 3 or 4 feet of snow on that river when we went in. And they come out, it just blew away. And big trees blowing across the river everywhere. So that was the only time ever I experienced a hurricane.
Very good.
When the war started, everyone started to move out to Mulligan to come up here. So we was up there, and there was a year or two after that, I suppose. We used to always go back hunting in the fall to Mulligan. Me and my brother Bob, Warren, Jock, Steve, we used to always go down and stay for the fall. So this time, just after Christmas.
No, before Christmas it was.
Just before Christmas, it froze up enough, we started going back. We was walking all little comedy with our stuff on. So we was down there, got up here to Upper Islands down there. And in the cove there was a fox. So we went after the fox. We got him down behind the grass, so we was all crawling after it. And Warren,
You was ahead.
I was ahead. And Warren set off his gun. And it hit me right in the back here. And it went right up along by my spine, right up and lodged by my shoulder blade. So we only had that little comedy, so they were pretty shook up, the boys. They put me on the comedy. And they started, I think they were running all the way till they got here. So when we got here, they wouldn't go in and tell my father. They were scared. So I had to go in myself. So they took me to the hospital. And your father, he checked it out, and it was so close to my spine that he couldn't take the bullet out. So it's still there yet.
Wow.
So when I was out St. John's to the hospital one time, I had to get an x-ray. And when the nurses come out, she said, "Do you know you got a bullet in your back?" I said, "Yeah, I got a bullet in my back."
Amazing.
It was, we lived pretty much off of land because we were so far away from the store, and you couldn't run into the store every day to get anything. So we ate whatever pretty much you got from the land. And I mean, you picked your berries and all this and everything else. I was only 2.5 when my mother died, so I can't remember my mother, but my grandmother, my dad's mother, she reared us up, me and my sister. I had a sister, she was only a few months old when my mom died. And so as soon as we were old enough to be able to help her, we had to help her because she was older. So we had to, ever since I can remember, I had to, you never thought twice about washing the dishes or trying to scrub the floor or wash the clothes on a washboard, things like that. And when we got old enough, myself and my sister, we would put out we wouldn't go too far, but we'd go in and we'd set up our little traps and snares and for smaller animals, because Daddy would select the squirrels and weasels and stuff like this for us. And well, we'd catch lots of rabbits, and we wasn't old enough to have a gun, so we couldn't shoot the partridges, but until we got older.
Yeah.
And then in the summertime when we were out up at Tikaralik Island, that's closer to Riglet, Daddy and my brother would be salmon fishing, and there used to be a lot of capelin them times, and the capelin would come ashore and we'd be busy with the capelin. I don't know what we ever did with all the capelin, that's the truth. Barrels and barrels. But a lot of people used to get them from Daddy, though they're just the same.
Did you put them on gardens?
Well, yes, you put them on the garden, but we used to get them to eat. See, we'd salt them and dry them. And he was really fussy, I tell you, about his capelin. They were really good capelin. You had to spread them out, one by one. That's the truth. And we had to turn them over about halfway through the day. Oh. And if you saw a storm coming, you'd have to pick them up, because the rain, he used to always say, is going to ruin the capelin. And we picked them up every single night and spread them out again every morning all over the pond.
Like barrels of them?
Barrels and barrels.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And the beaches used to be just stinking, them times, from what you wouldn't use. And it's hard to believe, but the sand in the beach where they came ashore, you'd feel like you was walking on sponge from so much spawn, there where they come ashore to spawn.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that you live between Tikaralik and Rocky Cove then?
Yeah. So,
when did you leave there?
I was 17 years old when I moved into Riglet.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so that was different, but we moved in there then. I guess everyone else. See, when I was growing up, there was a lot of other people in little places, in the trapping places, and they're salmon fishing or codfish outside too. Well, there was codfish around where we was too, them times. But yeah.
Did you travel by dog team in the winter?
Oh yes, but we never used to go on dog team or get to go on dog team very much, because grandmother used to keep us home to help her. But my father and brother and them, that's the only way we got around, was dog team. And when after it would freeze up, some years it would freeze up before Christmas, meaning when I says freeze up, like Doublemere, because you can't get to Riglet to get to the store to get supplies until Doublemere was frozen over, right? So some years they would get up before Christmas, and then, but always between Christmas and New Year's usually. And there was only 4 families lived in Rocky Cove where we lived. And but come Christmas time, they used to come in from other little settlements too.
So you get together?
Oh yes.
Yeah. And what was that like? What's Christmas like?
We enjoyed it very much. Yeah, and they always have a lot of square dancing. Oh. And we'd always go to Uncle Art Rich's house for the square dance, because he had a bigger house. And lots of pies and things like this. I always remember, because we'd never have any bake apples by then, but Aunt Viola Oliver, she'd always have her bake apple pies when she comes, so we'd be so excited for them to get there for the pies.
Yeah. And
they used to always tell us, I don't know, I guess you're a child, you just takes everything as they tell you. But they'd always say, if Doublemare's not froze over, Santa mightn't be able to get there this year. So we used to be so scared to look at our stocking. But there'd always be a few candy. But then when Daddy'd get to Riglet and coming back, when he'd come back with the dog team, there'd always be, colouring book and crayons that Santa left in Riglin for us. Now, we never figured it out, how he got there with the candy and couldn't get there with the rest, but that's another story. But that colouring book and crayons meant more to me, I'm sure, as if one of my grandchildren today had a computer for Christmas. Washed the supper dishes up after Daddy'd get back and set down colouring. Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah.
Do you mind if I get that basket?
And no, not at all.
I'd like people to see it, and maybe you tell us a bit about
Okay.
this.
Yeah, I don't really know what to tell you. All I know, it's always been in my family. On both sides of my family, actually, they've always sewed. And I always said, because I didn't get to go to school, when my girls would go to school, I always said the next thing to their education, I wanted to know that they could sew the grass work, and not just to know how to sew it, but up to what I figured was standard. So it would be, if you had to pass, in other words, like, just not anyhow, but it would be, so as it would be good enough to sell. And so they all three of the girls did learn how, and now my granddaughter is doing it. So I'm very proud and happy about that. Now, the grass that we use to sow it grows out by the salt water, and you got to know when to pick it. You usually around the middle of October, although these days it seems like with everything with climate change, I suppose it's getting later, but around the end of October, you pick the grass. You got to know what to pick because you got to have the strong stuff. Then you take it home and spread it out on a screen or something and dry it and stores it in bundles. Then when I wants to go sewing some, I got to take some, wet it in some warm water, roll it in a cloth, and I use plastic over it these days so they don't dry out until it's pliable, because if you can't sew it if it would break. Now, the stuff that you put in the inside, it don't matter about that, what that's like, but sometimes if you can get it at a certain time in the fall, that you'll get real pretty ones, like there might be pinks or greens, and then we'll be very happy because that's a really good grass. When we were growing up, I wouldn't think about sewing grass just anywhere like I do now. We'd only pick out the pretty ones. And for the design, right now, what I got in here is embroidery floss. But when we were growing up, that we used raffia. We used to call it colored grass. They used to get it from the Grenfell Mission in St. Anthony and Cartwright. I think, did you ever hear tell of Mrs. Keddy?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and she used to send it to grandmother. Like they would sew grandmother, and then when we were growing up, not only her, but all the other ladies too, and they'd have a whole lot sewed up, and they'd send it to the Grenfell and get some secondhand clothes in payment for it, or the color.
Could you just hold it a little closer to the camera?
Sure.
So that people can see it?
Yeah.
And tilt it towards me? There you go. That's amazing. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. When this is finished now, I'll put a lid on it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. And one time I used to do the little knob, little top for the lid. I would make that with grass too, but nowadays Garland carves them for me with the antler from the caribou. So he'll either make a little bird or a seal or something and put on there.
That's a great tradition.
My name is Morris Blake. I was born in Rigolet the 5th day in 1931. And back then we had to live off the country. We had a place up in Doublemere called Burn Place. And we was up there in winter time, and in the springtime we'd come down to a place called Rigolet and Mulliach. We used to fish up to Mulliach. My father worked for the Hudson Bay, and myself and Bruce, my brother Bruce, went up to Mulliach and we did fishing. And then when the fishing was done, we went back up to the Double Mare again for the winter and lived off the country, partridges and rabbits, whatever you could get. And then we do the same thing over again when the ice was gone again. The next year we go back to Rigollet again and Mollyhawk. So this is the life you know. So I don't know. It's just good times. It's kind of hard times, and to live off the country and trust for fishing and everything like that. And in 1946, when the fish wasn't very good, it wasn't really good price, and the fur was down, and the base was already started, Goose Bay. So we backed up in 1946 and moved up to North River, and I've been here ever since. I guess I'll end my day here. Yeah, that's about it, I guess.
What did you do, Paddy? You went to work with the IGA?
I went to work with the IGA. I worked with the IGA for 34 years, and I bought back a year, right? 35 years pension. Yeah.
And what did you do with the IGA?
With the IGA, I started off painting. When I was building the hospital, I started off painting, 6 years at that. And then I went into power plants for another 6 years. And from there, I went into garage. And I ended up, well, when the hospital closed in 83, we moved up to the Goose Bay, to the hospital up there. And I retired in 1987.
Can you tell me what it was like unloading coastal boats?
Yeah, we had the boats would come out here, and we just had to go to unload the boat with the old Tomcat. So that was, it's pretty cold sometimes, but we got it out on we had to get quite a few things for the hospital because there were a lot of patients in that, and they needed a lot of food,
So did all the supplies come in on the last vessel at the end of the year, kind of?
Yes, yeah. The last vessel now was, you had to make sure you had enough of a lot of things like flour and that, Yeah.
Okay. And who was Jack Watts was the boss, was he?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Your father was boss. You look
Yeah.
over, all right.
Okay.
Dr. Pad. And Jack Watts was boss. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were all like family, and we all worked together and had good fun in that. The years went by pretty fast, boy.
Before you moved up here, you told me a story about Kirkina Muckle.
Oh yes, yeah.
Could you maybe tell us about Kirkina, because people may not know about her, and then tell me this incident?
Yeah. Well, Kirkina, she wanted. We took her down to the Hudson Bay in Rigollet, the store in Rigollet, and I was wondering about it. There was a real low tide. Tide was low, and we was wondering how is she going to get down in that boat with the low tide like that. So anyway, she jumped down.
And she
went down on her own, jumped down on her own in the boat.
And she had no legs, is that?
No legs, just some beds,
What happened to her legs?
Well, her father went to the shopping to the Hudson Bay in Rigollet, and I guess a storm came up or something. That's what I was told. And they ran out of wood. And when he got home, her feet was frozen. So he sawed them off.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did a good job according to the doctors and that. And she survived anyway.
And she went away and got trained as a midwife?
Yeah, she was a midwife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was quite a lady.
Yeah. And she was the midwife for a lot of youngsters born around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very good.
Yeah. Well, then, and when I came up here in 1936, I used to work for your father, looking after the hens and that, and the three dogs he had. First off, before I had the permanent job, right? And then I got with the hospital painting.
Yeah.
Myself and Harold Bakey.
Yeah.
Yeah, they told me they had a month's work for me painting. And when I started, they said I was permanent. And Harold Bakey was down Snooksville fishing. And they told me to get a hold of him. So we worked together for a long while.
But what did you do with the Americans before that?
With the Americans, I was a grown man for the hydro. I was just working on the ground, but they let me go up in the pole just to try it out. But
Yeah. So you were stringing lines.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And you had no training or anything?
No training at all, no.
Okay, and you did a bit of that work for IGA too?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember we used to clean out septic tanks?
Oh, yes.
Can you remind
And the one thing I remember about that, doing a septic tank with Titplay, Horace,
Yeah.
I remember not to stay behind him, because when he was throwing that back, it would be a good place to be behind him. I tell you that.
I kind of remember that too.
Yeah, you're working.
Yeah. Okay, Pop, one thing I remember was hauling garbage from all the mission residences and the hospital and the dorm. And that old truck we had, it was oldest kind of a truck. Do you remember what make it was? Or
Wasn't it a Ford? Didn't she come from St. Anthony?
Oh, all right, yeah.
I believe she, the first one came from St. Anthony.
Something tells me it was in 1958.
Yeah.
But it had no windshield, eh?
No, I had no. And we used to, well, first of all, we used to haul, we put our garbage out on the ice out there, eh? Remember that?
I do.
And the machine we had a snow cruiser. Remember that snow cruiser?
Yes.
Yeah. And then after that, we hauled into Sundhill, and then we hauled it to the 4-mile mark up here, right?
Right. But we, myself and you and maybe Keith Watts or Bobby Purdy would all go around picking up all the garbage.
Yes, yeah.
And then we go into Sundayhill to dump.
Yeah.
And the bouncing in that, because that old thing never had shocks, I don't think.
I don't think she did. And coming out, you had to be awful careful because she go like mad.
Yeah. No brakes, not much.
No.
Yeah. But I remember stopping at the Hudson Bay store and getting, like for 25 cents, you get a drink and a bar or bag of chips, eh?
Yeah.
And we'd...
And I remember that old red one we had. I was myself and Harvey Godey. I was taking Harvey Godey. I was driving. He was going in the Sundayhill, and his gloves was wet. So he put them in the glove compartment, and there was no bottom to it, and they fell down on the floor.
It was a rough old vehicle.
Yeah, right.
Now, Pop, you worked in Sundayhill on that old tower they had.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, it was 165 feet high, the tower, and we had a Bridge Stratton engine in there, and they had a cord running to the top with 4 bulbs on a board. So when the bulbs could give out, they should just lower the thing down because no one wanted to go up that height, right, and change them.
Okay.
And we'd keep that motor on account of the planes. The planes coming in for Brennix and that, so they could see the light.
Was it a communications tower?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
See, that tower there was supposed to be one down at Big Pint, and they never got it finished on account of the work conditions, like this high hills and stuff like that. So then they kept the one in there. But we used to keep in touch with them down there. And Harold Bakey and Piercy Chalk used to work down on the Big Pint one. and I worked in here.
Okay. Who were you working for then?
I was working for a telephone.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Okay, very good.
Bill Telephone.
Now, Pat, you remember that old vessel, the Tomcod,
Yeah.
and what did we used to use that for?
Well, we used to use after when she came here, she was a water boat, I think, right in the army or something. And then, so myself and Clarence McLean, well, the plates over the deck, there was holes on the deck, and we welded the plates over it, and then we used it for hauling freight from the boats out here. They had first they had a Vivian engine in her, which was too slow. They wanted more power, and then they put in a 300 Caterpillar in her.
Okay.
But and then Albert, and they used it for hauling oil, and Albert Bird was captain on it from Cartwright.
And did they use her once to get oil from the old Cutthroat weather
Yes,
station?
yeah.
So it was just surplus oil from the military.
Yes, yeah.
But the IJ was always on the scrounge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That was the good old times, boy.
I remember going out in a Tomcod and she'd get out in the swell and she'd start to bang and big
And if-
boom.
And if you go behind, you can look right out through at the rocks,
Yeah.
out through the water.
Yeah.
It's just the backwater.
But she was condemned, I think. Eh? She wasn't
yeah.
insured.
Yeah, they condemned her after a while.
Yeah, but I think we used her after she was condemned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yes, they put a 300 horsepower Caterpillar in her, which seemed like too much power for her, really.
Oh. Well, I have a memory of being in the wheelhouse after dark, going out to unload one of the coastal vessels because the vessels couldn't get in here.
Yeah,
We had to go out in a smaller
That's right.
boat.
Yeah,
And everybody smoked in those days, and I can see clearly like about 15 cigarette brands, everybody puffing away,
oh yeah,
and that's all you could see in there.
yeah.
And Ernie or Clarence would be at the wheel, I think,
Yeah.
or maybe yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was a nice old vessel, and that was a nice activity in
Yeah.
Jack.
She used to take a lot of freight. We used to pull her right up.